We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 27b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara asked, what if you have a situation where there's a hideaway in the city, and a woman says she didn't hide, but she was not violated? So the Gemara continues and says, Ma'ali l'shaker, do we say that she basically has a migo over here? She could have said that she hid, and she would have been believed. So if she says she didn't hide, but she wasn't violated, she should be believed. Odil malo amrin, or maybe we don't say Ma'ali l'shaker in this situation. And the Gemara says, but what's the difference between this case and there was a certain incident as follows? There was a person who rented his donkey out to his friend. Amar Lane, he told the renter, Lo sezel ba'orcha de nahar Pakod, don't go on the road by the river Pakod. The ikamaya, there's water over there, the animal's going to drown. Zil ba'orcha de narish, rather you should go by the way of Nerish, the lekamaya, where there's no water. Now this guy went along and instead he took the donkey by the river Pakod, and the donkey died. Also Lakame de Rava, he came before Rava. Amar Lei, and the renter said to him, yes, but Orcha de Nahar Pakod Azli, I did go by the river Pakod. Miu lo havamaya, nevertheless there was no water there, so therefore I really should not be responsible. Amar Rava said, Mali l'shaker, he has over here a migo. Why should he lie? Iboy Amar Lei, if he wanted, he could have lied and said, Orcha de Neresh Azli, that I went on the way of Neresh. And so therefore we should believe him that he went on Pakod, but there was no water. V'amar Lei Abaye, and so Abaye said back to Rava, Mali l'shaker, but Malcolm Edim lo amrina. We don't say a Mali l'shaker where you have Edim that contradict. In other words, over here, it is easy to find witnesses who can confirm that there is water by the river Pakod, and therefore for him to say that there was no water, we don't use a migo to believe that against witnesses. And so the Gemara says, Hachi Ashta, what kind of comparison are you making between this case and the case of the woman who says that she didn't hide but she wasn't violated? Over there are certainly witnesses who can confirm that there's water by the Pakod River. But over here, do we know for sure that she was violated? There's no witnesses here. There's a concern she may have been violated. And if all you have is a concern, so we do say Mali l'shaker, and therefore we should believe the woman. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, if there are witnesses, afilu evid va'afilu shifcha, even if it's a slave, even if it's a maidservant, and they are believed. Again, they're believed to say that a particular woman was not violated when captors entered into the city. And so the Gemara says, va'afilu shifcha dida mehemna, even her own shifcha is going to be believed. But the Gemara says, but we have the following contradiction from a Mishnah. The Mishnah says, lotus yacherimo, this is talking about a case where they've already drafted a get, they've already written up a bill of divorce. So the halach is the man and woman, the husband and wife, are not allowed to be together once the divorce document was written up. And if they do have relations with one another, you have to write up a new divorce document. So the halach is they can't even go into seclusion with one another, unless there are witnesses. If there are witnesses there, so then they're not going to have relations with one another because of the presence of the edim. And the Mishnah over there says, even if there's just an Eved that is present, even if it's just a Shifcha that is present, that is enough to prevent them from having relations with one another, Chutz mi Shifchasa, with the exception of her own Shifcha, because a woman is comfortable with her own maidservant. So you see from that Mishnah that even if her own maidservant is present, she's very comfortable with her, and therefore in that situation it's possible that they did have relations in that situation, and the Shifcha is not going to testify otherwise. She's not going to want to contradict the wife over here. So it should be the same concern in this case. If her own shifcha comes and says she was not violated, she should not be believed. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rav Papi says, B'shvu yehi kilu. When it comes to situations of captivity, we actually are more lenient. In a case of husband and wife being together, we do not rely on the wife's shifcha, but in a case of captivity, we would rely on the wife's shifcha. And the Gemara continues, Rav Papa says, Ha b'shifcha dida, ha b'shifcha didei. When it comes, the difference is if it's her shifcha or if it's his shifcha. In other words, when it's her shifcha, so her shifcha is not believed because she's very comfortable with her shifcha. It's possible that her shifcha would lie, etc. But when it comes to his shifcha, so his shifcha is going to be believed, and that's what our mission is talking about, that even his shifcha would be believed. And the Gemara says, V'shifcha dida lo mehemna, but is that really true that her maidservant is not believed? Hakatani, but what does it say in our Mishnah? It says, Ein adam meid al atzmo. It says a person can't testify about himself. Hashifcha dida bet mehemna. She can't testify about herself, but her shifcha could testify about her. And so therefore it seems even from our Mishnah that her shifcha is believed. And to that the Gemara says, Shifcha sanami ka'atzma dami. No, her shifcha is the same thing as her. That's identical, and therefore just like she's not believed about herself, so to her shifcha is not believed to testify on her behalf. And the Gemara continues, Rav Ashi says, Ha v'ha b'shifcha dida. In both cases, in the case over there by the get, and in the case over here by the captivity, we're talking about her shifcha. V'shivcha michsa chazia v'shaskan. What a shivcha will do is she'll see what happens, but she'll be quiet. She won't say anything. She's not going to necessarily testify falsely, but she'll be quiet and she won't testify against the woman. So over there, the shtikasa matirasa, over there, just by her being silent, that actually permits everything. So lo mehemna, so there her shifcha is not believed. Meaning when it comes to the situation of divorce, the shifcha just doesn't say anything at all, and then there's a presumption that they did not have relations, and that would make her mutter. So there we can't believe the shifcha, because we would think that maybe the shifcha is just being silent, is not testifying against the wife. But over here, the shtikaso sarta, here in this case of the captors, when they come into the city, the assumption is she was violated, and we need the shifcha to actively testify that she was not violated. Quiet is not going to be enough. If she's quiet, it's going to prohibit her. So therefore, mehemnas over here, where she actively testifies and says that the woman was not violated, the shifcha is going to be believed. But the Gemara says, Hashtanami, why is that true? Here also, in our case of the captivity also, Asyu Mashakra, maybe the shifcha will come and maybe she'll actively lie on behalf of this woman. And to that, the Gemara says, Tarti lo avda. No, two things the shifcha is not going to do. The shifcha is not going to stand by and then also go ahead and actively lie about it. That she won't do. She's willing to be quiet on behalf of the woman over here, of the wife, but she's not going to be willing to actively lie. And the Gemara continues, Ki had Mari Barisik, it's like the story of Mari Barisik, V'amri lo Chana Barisik, some say it was about Chana Barisik, Asalei Acha mi Beichoza, his brother came from Beichoza. Amar lady said to him, Plogli b'nech Se'ava, let's split up the property of father. We're two brothers, we split the property. Amar le, he said back to him, Lo yadanalach, I don't know you, you're not my brother. Asalekami de Rav Chisda, so he came in front of Rav Chisda for a judgment. Amar le, he said to him, Shapir kamar lach, that's very possible that he doesn't recognize you. Techsiv vayakar Yosef esacha v'hem lo hikiru, it says that Yosef recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. Malamed sheyatza below chasim hazakan, it shows that he left, he didn't have a beard. Uba bechasim hazakan, and he came back with a beard. It's possible that one brother can recognize the other brother, but that other brother can't recognize him. It's possible that you changed. So Amar le, so he said to this brother, Zil aisi sahadi dachua, just go bring witnesses that you're the brother, and then you'll be able to get the property. Amar le said back to him, Isli sahadi, I do have witnesses, umistafinu mine, but they're afraid of Mari Barisik, because the Gavra Almo, he's a very strong, violent man, and they don't want to testify, they'd rather be silent. So Amar le lididei zil sinuat, to lava chachu, so he says, okay, fine. He said to Mari Barisik, you bring witnesses that this is not your brother. Amar le, so he said to him, Dina hachi, is that really the halacha? Hamotzi mechaver olav harayah. If a person wants to take something from his friend, he has to bring the proof. He needs to bring evidence that he's my brother. I don't need to bring proof that he's not my brother. Amar le, so he said back to him, Hachi da'inana loch ulakuli al mechavrach. This is how I do all judgments for people like you, violent people. They have to go bring evidence that the other one is not the brother. That's how I judge all cases like this. And so the Gemara now says, 1 second, Hashtanami, if people are so afraid over here that they won't come forward, so here also, Asu Mashakri, maybe he'll bring forward witnesses that will lie. We just said that the people are so afraid that they won't testify that this guy is the brother, so maybe he'll bring witnesses that will lie and say that he's not the brother. And so to that, the Gemara sees, you see the same idea, Tarti lo avdi. Two things people won't do. People are willing to be silent and not speak up, but to come into the court and say something that is not true, to actively lie, they won't go so far. And the Gemara continues, let's say this issue of whether her maidservant is believed to say that she was not violated, let's say that's a machlokas tanoim. The first brisa says, Zu edus ish v'isha tinok v'tinokas, for this testimony we accept a man, a woman, a young boy, a young girl, avia v'ima, even her father, her mother can testify, v'yachia v'achosa, or even her brother or her sister, avalo b'na uvita. However, when it comes to her son or her daughter, they can't testify. Lo avda v'shivchas, and her servant and her maidservant, they can't testify. So according to this first brisa, it's clear that her maidservant is not allowed to testify on her behalf. V'tanya yidach, but we have another brisa that says, Hakol ne'emonin lohaid, everybody's believed to testify, chutz mehemenu bal, except for her and her husband. And so according to the second brisa, it seems that her maidservant is allowed to testify on her behalf. And so the Gemara says, "De Rav Papi u de Rav Ashi tanoi." According to Rav Papi and Rav Ashi, certainly they have to say it's a machlokas tanoim. As Rashi over here says, "De Rav Papi v'Rav Ashi de Amru La'el shivcha di dam hemna." They're the ones that said that her shivcha is believed. So vaday tanoi, it's got to be machlokas tanoim. Al karchach yomru anon zamrin kimas niso basraisa. They're going to be forced to say that they only go like the second brisa midikashalu kamaisa, because the first brisa certainly contradicts what they're saying. The first brisa says shivchasa is not allowed to testify, and they said that shivchasa is allowed to testify. But to Rav Papa milema tanoihi. But according to Rav Papa, do we need to say it's a machlokas tanoim? As Rashi over here says, the Rav Papa de Omar lo mehemna. Rav Papa was the one that says that her maidservant is not believed. He didn't say that her maidservant is believed. He said her maidservant is not believed. And Rav Papa was the one that said only his maidservant is believed. So milema tanoihi, do we have to say that's a machlokas tanoim? And the Gemara says not necessarily. Amar lach Rav Papa can respond to you as follows: Kitanya hahi b'mesicha lefi tuma. When that brisa over there, what did that brisa mean? That was talking about in the regular course of conversation. Rashi over here says, Milema Tanoihi, does Rav Papa have to say it's a machlokas Tanoim? Kilomar dochak hu lomar anod amri kemasnisa kamaisa. Meaning to say, does he have to say that he goes like the first brisa where she is not believed? O yuchal ataretz masnisa brasraisa nami kavasi. But maybe he can even say the second brisa also goes like him. Second brisa was the one that says that everyone is believed. And that also goes like him. Lememar shivchasa ke'atzmadami. To saying that her shivcha is like her. In other words, maybe you could say that second brisa means to say except for her, she can't testify on her own behalf. But maybe also her shivcha is like her and also can't testify. The katani ba, because it says ba, or maybe you can give another answer. And the Gemara then says, Amar lach Rav Papa, Kitanya hi dekatani hakol ne'amonim. I can answer as follows. That brisa that said everybody is believed, va'afilu shivcha dida, means to say even her shivcha is believed. You can explain as follows. The Mesechet lefi tuma, that her shivcha is believed in some situations. I generally say that her shivcha is not believed, but in a situation of Mesechet lefi tuma, when it's in the course of regular conversation, then actually we would believe the shivcha. And the Gemara continues, Ki had d'chiyasar Rav Dimi Amar Rav Chanan Kartignoa. It's like when Rav Dimi came, he said that Rav Chanan Kartignoa said, Mishtoi Maisa Ba Lifnei Rav Yoshua ben Levi. He brought the following Maisa that came before Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. The Amri lo Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, Mishtoi Maisa Ba Lifnei Rebbe. Some people say that it's Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi who said that there was an incident that came before Rebbe. B'yadam echad shei Masiach lefi tumo. There was a certain person who, in the course of conversation, he said, Ani v'imi nishbinu levein ovdei kochav, myself and my mother, we were held captive by the idol worshippers. Yatzazi lishov mayim, and when I went out to draw water, daiti alimi, I was always paying attention to what was happening with my mother. Lalaket eitzim, if I went out to collect wood, daiti alimi, I was paying attention to what was happening with my mother. V'isiya Rebbe l'kun al pev, and based on that testimony, Rebbe said that she was allowed to marry a Kohen. In other words, we believe that testimony because it was Masiach lefi tumo. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakatzav. Rabbi Zechariah ben Hakatzav said, Hama'on hazeh, by this abode, that's a language of a shvuah, of an oath. He made the following oath. Lo zaza yada mitoch yadi misha shenichnasu ovdei kochavim l'Yerushalayim. From the moment that the idol worshippers entered Yerushalayim, her hand, my wife's hand, it never left my hand. I know she wasn't violated. V'yad sheyatzu, until they left Yerushalayim. Amru lo, they said to him, Ein adam meir al atzmo. A person is not allowed to testify in his own behalf. Therefore, your testimony is not accepted. And they said that his wife was prohibited to him. And the Gemara says, Tana was taught, V'yafa pichein, nevertheless, Yiched lo bayis b'chatzeiro. He designated for her a house in his chatzer. Uchashi yotza, when she left, yotza barosh baneh, she would leave first before her sons, so her children would be there to ensure that they were not in seclusion in the chatzer. Uchashi nechneses, and when she would enter into the chatzer, nechneses besof baneh, she would enter again after her children, so therefore her children would be present, and that would prevent them from having relations with one another, because again, they were prohibited to one another. And the Gemara continues, Boya Abaye asks the following question. Ma'u lasos begrusha kain. What about doing the same thing by a grusha, by a divorcee? Are you allowed to live in the same, are you allowed to live with her in the same chutzner, and you'll just rely on the children in order that there's no seclusion, that there's no relations? Hasamhu devishvuya hekilu. You could say over there, by captivity, they were a little more lenient. We allowed her to live in the same chutzner. Aval hachalo, but maybe over here by divorce, we don't allow that. Odilmor, maybe loshna, maybe there's no difference. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, Hamegarish es ishto lo tinase bishchunaso. If you have a situation where a person divorces his wife, she should not get married and then live in the same area. As Rashi over here says, lo tinase bishchunaso lefisha makira b'remizosov ukritzosov. She recognizes his hints and his the indications that he gives her. Shama yavoli de avera. If they live in proximity, we're afraid they're going to come to avera. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chav Ches Amud Aleph.